Iraq, back in the end of the 90s, 99, Iraq is the 5th largest petrol reserve in the world. They are huge. And October 2000, Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq, just takes a decision. So there's something that somebody said that was important here. Tomé said that's why the EU created the euro, to compete with the dollar. And in 2000, Saddam Hussein announces that oil will no longer be sold in US dollar, and it will be sold in euros, the currency of the European Union. He announces that probably after doing some deals with the Europeans, I guess. And he's like, no, listen, Americans, they're doing too much. We're gonna sell all the oil that we have in euros now. And the Americans lie. So I'm not giving you opinions. I'm just giving you known facts, stuff that happened, right? In 2000, 2002, around there, the Americans start their campaign. They start campaigning. They start doing what they do. They start, at that time, they have control of information around the world with CNN. And they start chanting this thing of Saddam is a dictator, is a bad person. They have weapons of mass destruction that they are building. And Colin Powell goes to the United Nations with a little thing like this. I don't know how we say in English. And they hear like, yo, they have chemical weapons. So I don't know if I can find a photo of that, but I'm sure that Colin Powell, Fiol UN. There you go. Soon as, and he goes to the UN and shows this to the, what? Get out of here. All right. He goes and he shows this. And listen, in there's probably some milk and some coffee or some caramel, or listen, who knows? But he goes to the UN and he does what people know how to do. What we've been seeing the last, let me talk. Listen, he goes and he's like, they have chemical gas. They're ready to kill the world. The CIA found that. We have to do something. And everybody gets emotional. Oh my God. We have to liberate the Iraqis. We have to liberate them from the dictator. And Operation, what's the name of the operation? Operation Iraqi Freedom starts in March 2003, the first war that is televised. And the US invades Iraq. But it's not the same as Russia invading Ukraine. It's not the same thing. Because Russia is bad. Here, it's for freedom. So because it's for freedom, it's a good invasion. 5 million Iraqis die, kids die, All these people died, but it's for freedom. And they hang that nigga live on CNN. Like, imagine like how barbaric, like if we did that to the French president, how barbaric it would be. But no, cool, they're here. They played on live TV. I remember seeing it at night, and I don't remember what Saddam said before being hanged, but he said something. That was how, listen, me, I was young, but I was shocked. I was like, yo, all right. And in June 2003, once the US took control of that whole thing, Iraq goes back to selling oil in dollars. And the petrodollar is protected. And everything goes back to normal. With time, we discovered that there was never weapons of mass destruction, that they lied. And none of them was called by the International Cour Pénale Internationale because, all right, that's story number one. I'm explaining to you all these stories because I want you to understand how a rebellion forms. The second story I want to talk to you about is 2002. In 2002, so imagine the whole people out there in Iraq, right? In 2000 and 2003, disgruntled. You know, they're like, we don't like this. Like, and imagine that the French and the Europeans, they don't say nothing because they're cowards. But imagine how they're feeling inside when they are between themselves. They're like, our allies is actually fucking our bag. They're doing everything for us to not be able to use the euros and make our currency strong. And now we have all the countries since 2000. We have all our countries. The Portugal, they ditch the scudos for euros. The French, they ditch the French for euros. The Germans, they ditch the Dutch francs for euros. The Belgium, they ditch the Belgian francs for euro. Imagine all these people now. They have a currency and they cannot do local changes to their money. For example, you want to combat inflation in Germany, you could do something from your central bank using the Dutch mark, right? But if everybody's in euros, you want to do something in Germany, but the French might not agree because it will cut your inflation for you, but it will change the employment rate in France. So now you all are together with one big machine that is heterogenic, and so you are like, oh, okay, let's work together, and maybe, yeah, we could start trading some stuff in euros. And the US is like, nah, my friends, it's not happening. All right, 2002, Hugo Chavez, who's the president of Venezuela, they have the largest oil reserves in the world. And they are selling their oil to everybody in US dollar. And in 2002, Hugo Chavez come to the world and say, yo, starting now, we are going to sell our oil in euros. And everybody's like, wow, what's going on? Da, da, da. And the US does what they did in hundreds of countries. I have to find the link of this video, but that was an amazing video about all the coup they did. They back a coup against Chavez that doesn't really work but destroy the whole Venezuelan economy. And now Venezuela, which is, they have the largest oil reserves in the world, and they still are one of the poorest countries because, you know, bad gestion. But it starts with this, because they were making a lot of money at that time as long as they were cool with the US. Soon as they want to get out of the USD, cool. And now Venezuela is shit show. That's story number 2. And it looked, I mean, and there's a lot of stories that are like these 2 stories. There's a lot of them around the world. And I'll put a link in the description of a video where they explain all the coup that the US have done. In 2002, there is a huge economical crisis because of the dot-com bubble. So all the internet companies, they all fail, and with them, they take the whole US economy because everybody was betting on the Yahoos and all the first dot-com companies. And to bail everybody out, as always, the US Federal Reserve decide to print more dollars. Quantitative easing, they print more dollars to save all these companies and to make sure that the US economy doesn't go down. But as they print more dollar, they make the value of the dollar, which is based on nothing. They make all their partners around the world be like, yo, imagine that the world reserve, so your reserves are in USD. That's why you are Congo, you are some countries. Let's say you have $10 billion. And because the US is printing more dollars, it makes the value of the dollars go down. Now, let's say that your $10 billion that you have now, their value is now only $7 billion. You can only buy what you could buy. You could buy worth of 10 million. Now is 10 billion. Now is down to 7 billion. And you're like, yo, the US, can you stop going at war with people? Can you stop like all these things? Because whenever you take wrong decisions, everybody else money is suffering, and then everybody else's economies are suffering, and we cannot do the things we would want to do because you are the ones who are controlling the world reserves. In 2008, another date that is important, there's a big financial crisis, one of the biggest financial crises after the 39 financial crisis in 2008. We were all there. It's Lehman Brothers Bank. All the banks start failing, and the housing market just goes down, and it takes the whole US economy down. And what they do, they print more dollars. If you are France and your country has problems, like for example right now, you are France and you have a problem with the pensions and you have everybody in the streets, you could make everybody happy by saying, you know what, let's print 500 billion francs and let's turn them into euros, and let's put it in the pension system, and we keep the age at 62, and we give money to everybody, and everybody's happy. You can't do that if you're France, because the European Union have a big central bank called the EU Central Bank, and they are the one who can print euros. You, France, cannot print euros. So you cannot do a thing like the US do whenever the economy is going down, or whenever they have a war, they can just go to Congress, show some lie about something, print some money, and save all the banks. And this, the other countries like France, Germany, they're like, in 1944, we did a mistake, because we gave power to these ones, and they are starting to bully people around the world, and they are bullying us too. In 2009, the Colonel Gaddafi, who's in one of the richest country at that time in Africa with huge reserves, which is Libya, and they have huge oil reserves, and they have actually one of the biggest oil reserves in Africa. And Gaddafi says to everybody, he goes to the he sits down with all the African presidents, and he's like, guys, we are dealing with America, and we are all selling our oil in gold, in US dollar. But what we should do, since we have in Africa all the reserves of gold, all the reserves of coltan, manganese, etc., in Congo, this uranium in Mali, etc., we should do an African currency based on, pegged to our reserves of gold, that we will call the golden dinar. And this will be a currency for Africans, and we will have everybody sell our oil, and the rest of our, if you want to be down with it, Congo and the rest of the countries, we could sell everything in golden dinar, because we have gold reserves to back our currency, and we could have a system so that these people in London and in the US stop deciding how much what we have cost in Wall Street, and we can have our own Wall Street, and we can decide and take care of our own future. And most African governments are like, that's a very good idea, I think. But, the US, I'm a little scared, they can create a coup d'etat in here, or they can fund our rebels. And they're like, listen, don't worry, we got this. And the UN, NATO, and the US create a coalition with France to liberate Libya, all the Libyans that apparently are suffering from the horrible dictator. And, campaign, TV, a little month, and you make the old opinion rally, and they say, we got to go liberate them with missile and bring democracy in there. And they liberate Libya, turning it from a country that was a modern country to a hellhole where there's back to slavery, and you got refugees running away from this country and all dying in the cemetery that is the Mediterranean Sea. And now the Europeans are complaining about all these refugees that are coming to their shores, and they're complaining, we don't know to who, because they should complain to the people who went to liberate Libya, that didn't ask for nothing. They just were like, hey, we want to take care of our destiny, and we cannot take care of our destiny if we have the IMF cuffing our hands, and the World Bank pressuring us, and the US wanting us to do everything in USD so they can control our money, what we do with it, and decide when they want that, we put sanctions on you, you cannot use USD, etc. So let's have our own money so we can take care of our own destiny. And you know what? That's what happened in 2009. Gaddafi is dead, and they show his body on national TV as if he was a nobody, a world leader. 2019, we arrived to exactly. They showed a guy so that in case anyone would have the same idea. Completely do agree. Let's move forward because I wanna go back to part 3, but let's move forward to the pandemic. I'm using all the words that YouTube used to demonetize my stream. Listen, somebody sent me a super chat of $5. So like, anyway, so in 2019, 2020, it was 2019, 2020, right? COVID, pandemic, all the countries decide to lock down. And this destroys the world economy completely. Everything stops. The country doing oil have no revenue for 2 years. The singers have no revenue for 2 years. We all here stuck at home. I start Club Shada because I have nothing else to do. Everybody's online. Everybody's on Instagram Live, etc., etc. We all lived it. And the U.S. economy and the Europe economy are completely failing. So what they do, they print more euros to buy vaccines, to buy, to save all their economies. And the Americans decide that everybody is staying at home and all these people will receive $2,000 per month for staying at home. So if you have 10 people in your house, you get $20,000. Everybody get $2,000 in their bank account. How do they send that money? They print more money. They print more dollars and they don't care. They have a good excuse. It's the pandemic. So they print more dollars and more people are like, yo, I mean, these guys can do what they want with the world reserve because they control it. And that's how crypto explodes, because a lot of people put their money in crypto, in bitcoins, in a lot of altcoins, XRP, etc., Cardano. Crypto explodes, Dogecoin, etc., etc. And the US brings, the US prints, I think they print more dollars. They print as much as 2 times the amount of dollars that is in circulation. Or maybe like, I think there was $1 trillion in circulation. They print another $2 trillion to save their economies. And now you have so much dollars circulating in the world that the value of a dollar is divided by 3, and the faith in the dollar is starting to go down. Let's move forward. I'm not gonna go in how. Listen, a lot of them. I'm not gonna go in how we got there because I did a whole video about it in 2022, February, after the whole the failure of the 2014 Accords, the failure of NATO to stay in its place, and the West Ukrainian bombing the East Ukrainians for years. Russia says, I had enough. I've been telling you for 10 years to stop expanding to me and try to turn everybody into Western countries. we invading Ukraine. The Russians invade Ukraine, and a few things happen there that are important for what we are talking today. One thing is, all the European governments, and with the American one and the Canada, they all decide on a narrative, and they all decide that they're going to do something that was never done, even during the 2 world wars. The banks would keep talking to each other. But why is this guy calling me at this time? I'm live. So the Americans and the Europeans decide that they are removing Russia from SWIFT. So SWIFT is a messaging system that banks use. So every bank has that program, and they say, hey, because you cannot send. So how did this begin? I think it began with the churches. When you had 500 years ago, and maybe more, 500 years ago, when you had, let's say, 1,000 in gold, you had 1,000 bricks of gold, and you were in Rome, and you wanted to send them in France. Not only was it dangerous to walk around with gold, but it was also very heavy. So what they would do is they would put all their gold in forts or churches somewhere. I think it was in churches. They put it in the Vatican. There's a lot of gold there. They put it there in a church, and then they would send a clerk on a horse, and he would go to Roma and say, hey, these guys have 1,000 of kilos of gold in our church out there. And so the people out there in Roma, in France, in Paris, for example, Lutèce would say, okay, I note that Rome has 1,000 of gold. So if Rome wants to buy something in Paris, like a boat or build a cathedral or something, and they need 500 bricks of gold, they can say, yeah, we need 5,000 bricks of gold to spend, and the people who are supposed to give you your gold in the banks or whatever, I don't know, but the people who are supposed to give you your 500 of gold, they know they can give you the gold because the messenger told them that you have 1,000 of gold out there. So they give you 500 of gold in Paris so you can buy your stuff in Paris. And then they send a messenger back to the church where your gold is sitting in Roma and say, hey, they use 500 of gold to build something in Paris. So they remove 500 of gold from your reserve in Roma, and you don't have to send the 500 of gold out to Paris, because the banks talk to each other and they all have, let's say they all have 10,000 of gold. So they just know that in my 1,000 of gold that I have here, you only now have 500 because you spend 500 in that other bank. And this is how it became a messaging system, where when you wanna send money you wanna send 100 million from Russia to Paris, because or from Paris to Russia because you bought X amount of gas, you don't send the money physically, you just send a message from bank to bank that says, hey, France just sent X amount of money to Ting. The money doesn't move, and everybody know in there, the whole system, there's a ledger that tells everybody that now Russia has 100 million from France. So France has minus 100 million, Russia has plus 100 million. And this is just what SWIFT does. It's just a messaging system. But they decide to remove Russia from SWIFT. And you know what happens when they do that? The French Minister of Economy says, we are removing these guys from SWIFT, and in 1 week, the whole Russian economy will be on their knees. And they start doing a campaign so that any company that is working still in Russia and saying, yeah, but I have employees, they didn't choose to do the war. Like, they just families, like, we have 45,000 employees. Like, what are we going to do? They force everybody to abandon all their companies, because if not, you're frowned upon. And they believed at that point that this would kill the Russian economy. What they didn't know is that a messaging system is a messaging system. It's just sending each other messages. Everybody's using SWIFT around the world, and it's controlled by the Americans. But I mean, you can build your own messaging system if you've been ready. And actually, Russia was ready. Russia, China, they were building their own messaging system to send the information about trades. They thought that removing SWIFT from Russia would remove air from Russia. And actually, it didn't change nothing. And that was a huge mistake, because first of all, this showed other countries that we all playing the game. We all playing the game, the economical game, and we all don't agree on some things. But now you guys are telling me that if you disagree with me, so you guys went to war in 2003 with Iraq, and this was a war that was based on lies, just because you wanted to protect your interest, right? You did that, and nobody did sanctions to you, and nobody removed you from SWIFT because you control SWIFT, and nobody prevented you from using the US dollar because you control the US dollar. But now that Russia is doing exactly what you did, you were here telling everybody it's not the same thing, and you are removing Russia from SWIFT. So what does it say to the rest of the country watching? They're like, yo, we can't trust these people, and we cannot use dollars. We cannot have too much dependency on the dollar, because the Americans are using the dollars as a political tool and as a weapon. And I have a friend that works at the big bank in Congo, and one day Americans told her, I cannot give details, but one day they told her, if you continue your bullshit, we will remove SWIFT from you, just like they did to Angola. They can invent whatever thing. Oh, you are funding this or whatever. They can say whatever they want, and boom, they removed you from SWIFT, and now you cannot use the US dollar. So if you cannot use the US dollar, you can still use the euros. No, because the Americans tell the Europeans, if you work with a country that we sanction, then we will sanction you too. And the Europeans are scared, so they follow. And instead of having at least two choices, you only have one choice, and it's controlled by one person. And that person can bully people how they want. So this sent shockwaves around the world. A lot of people were like, yo, they can remove people from SWIFT just like that? And now your bank, they just say, oh, these bank cannot use this. And all these people, we're removing your boats, we're removing your whatever. And we don't care if you are part of this or that. Because we just say, he's a friend with Putin. And everybody's like, yeah, well done, motherfuckers. Because people are emotional. But if you look at the world the way I look at the world, you're like, uh-oh. They might have shot themselves in the foot. Let's say what happens. And what happened is that China and Russia already had another system that was a copy of SWIFT that they were testing for years. And when they say, we remove you from SWIFT, they said, all right, cool. So now, if you want gas, you're going to have to pay it in ruble or Chinese money. And the Europeans said, no, we're not supposed to pay in, we pay in dollars. And they were like, nope, not anymore. But that's the rules. Well, listen, if you remove me from the game, I'm going to play the game the way I want. And you guys going to pay me in ruble. All right. During this war, and nobody knows the reasons of the war yet, but one day it will be known. But there was a pipeline called Nord Stream. The gas was going from Russia, going through Ukraine, and continuing to Europe. Every time the gas was going to Ukraine, all the Ukrainian oligarchs were taking a fee, billions and billions of dollars, and they were using a lot of that money to send back to the US, etc., etc. And then Germany and Russia, they had a deal. We're going to build a second pipeline called Nord Stream 2 that will not go through under Ukraine, so we won't have to pay them. We will go directly in the Baltic Sea and arrive directly in Germany. And Germany was the one that really needed these gas to make their industry work. They use a lot of gas and they don't have nuclear plants in the contrary to the French and other people. So the Germans, just before the war, that's when they were activating the new pipeline, Nord Stream 2. And Biden promised them, if Nord Stream 2 goes online, we will destroy it. Facts, not opinion, facts. And what happens is that at that point, the Germans, they were not so inclined to send weapons and to support Ukraine. They wanted to say, yeah, the invasion is not good, but listen, we have our deals with Russia and we need that gas. And the Americans were like, no, we can sell you gas. And they were like, yeah, but you want to sell us 4 times the price? Yeah, guys, listen. Let's find a solution. Let's go talk to Putin. Let's go see if there's a way to change that. And at a point, Zelensky wanted to sit down with the Russians and negotiate a peace treaty. The Americans said no. And the Americans, it's been proven, destroy the pipeline number 2. Nord Stream 2 were destroyed by the Americans. It's a known fact. Who is the most frustrated in your opinion? Because nobody will tell you that in the news. But in reality, the Germans were pissed off. They were fuming. They were like, what the hell is this? We hear it's not a pipeline that was built by the Russians. It's a pipeline that was built by the Russians and the Germans. Cost them billions, both of them. And the Americans, they just came, blew it up. So the Germans were livid, crazy, pissed off, angry. But, you know, they won't say nothing. Because if you're not on one side, the public opinions will be like, what? You support this crap? Okay. Silicon Valley Bank. There's a bank run on all the American banks because we realize that most American banks, if you put, if let's say it's 10 people, you put each of you $10,000 in the bank. So the bank is supposed to have $100,000. And if all of you at the same time, usually what the bank do, they take your $100,000, they will keep maybe $10,000, which is called fractional reserve. And instead of keeping all your money in the bank, they will keep $10,000 in case one of you needs $1,000. They will use that. But they then take the $90,000 and they invest it into bonds and other economical stuff. And because they do it, they make money from the revenue. And whenever they make money from the dividends of those investments. And whenever you come and you say, hey, I need my money, they always have 10,000 just in case, because they're not all 10 of them will come and ask their money. So even if all 10 of them ask for 1,000, yeah, we have 10,000. And that's how they do. The problem is all these banks in the US and in Europe as well, Credit Suisse, SVB, and actually there's hundreds of banks, but they are pretending that, nah, don't worry, everything is fine. A lot of these banks, they bought some special long-term investment that actually are safe. And they are safe because in the long term, after 10 years, they will bring like a big interest. But because the US has been printing and printing and printing and printing more dollars, inflation is going up. Because inflation is going up, the value of those bonds is actually less, meaning that it's something that let's say you put your 100 million in those special government bonds. In 10 years, you will come back with 110 million, but it's going to take 10 years. I'm giving you fake numbers. It's just to explain to you more or less quickly economics. But if the inflation go, actually the value of those bonds goes from 100,000 to only 80,000. So all these banks, they were like, uh-oh, we have no liquidity. We have your money, but we invested your money in something that cost. So go back to all you 10 people, you all put 10,000 in the bank. The bank took 100,000 to simplify. They put it in those special monetary elements, and normally they will make 110. And then when you come and say, hey, I need 10,000 to buy something, they will get back their 110 and they will give you your money or whatever. But the problem is, with all the inflation, all the money being printed, all the system going crazy because the Americans are just printing and printing more dollars, the 100,000 that they invested is only worth 80,000. So if they sell now, they lose money. They need to wait 10 years. And you think your money is safe in the bank. And what happens is, like, some investors start talking, some companies start talking, all you 10 people, you start talking to yourself. You're like, yo, apparently this bank is having trouble. We should remove our money. And all 10 of you all go at the same time to the bank and you say, hey, I need my 10,000. It's called a bank run. When everybody's asking their money at the same time, and the bank only has 10,000 in their reserve because everything else is invested. But all 10 of you want your 10,000. So they need 100,000 that they don't have. And that's how all these banks went down, because not 10 people, but millions of Americans and big companies were like, yo, I need my 1 million. I need my 10 million. I need my, and you don't have to go to the bank nowadays. You just go to your computer and you say, hey, send me my money. And that's how Credit Suisse, SVB, and all these banks went down. And actually, there's a lot of banks that are in the same situation. And the Americans said, all right, we'll print more dollars. So we created the problem, and to fix the problem, we add more problem. And so we might be on the verge of a huge economic downfall if the Americans don't continue controlling the thing and continue changing the rates to combat inflation. The rates make those things where all these banks are investing, they make it less interesting. So all this created a world where the dollar is becoming more and more dangerous to hold for people. Let me tell you something that happened to me in the Zouk industry. At a point with Section Zouk, we had a monopoly on the Zouk market. France and West Indies. Not only on the monopoly on the sales, because we had all the artists from the top 1 to the top 30. Everybody was in the different labels that were part of Section Zouk, Sushi Raw, etc., etc. And every club had deals with the different managers and bookers that we were working with, right? So every artist wanted to sign with us so they could be part of our system. You sign with us, you have music videos, you get radio plays for sure, because we had people in every radio, and you're gonna perform. Soon as your song plays for 1 month, we're gonna send you to all the clubs, because we already have deals with all the clubs. So when everybody's calling for Fanny G or Kaysha or Sumia, we're gonna put you to open the shows, and after 6 months, people will know your face, etc., and you become famous. So we had the whole thing. And then in the summer, we send you to the West Indies, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Guyane, and you go 2 months there. You make your name for everybody. When everybody come back from holiday, you're a superstar now. So now you can go and do your thing. In exchange, you give us your publishing, and we make the money from your CD sales. You make the money from your show. That was the business. But once we got the monopoly, some people inside of Section Zouk started going to the boss, and they start telling him, hey, only the people who are part of this label and part of that management and inside of Section Zouk should go to the West Indies, should have access to all these shows, etc., etc. And they start having mafia moves and extortion and bully moves with the artists, with the clubs, and with the artists that were outside of Section Zouk. So in 2007 is the last time I go to Martinique, Guadeloupe. I'm there. I see that we are doing a bunch of shows, and it's not paid a lot because we're doing shows for promo, shows like, and it's more like, let's stay for 2 months, do like 30 show, all paid 300, and then at the end it's still a lot of money. And me, I was like, that's not a good idea, because you are devaluating the value of all these artists. That's what I was telling. And everybody was looking at me like, oh, this guy wants to fuck the business, because I was going to the artists And I was telling them, it's not a good idea to be here all the time. You cannot come here in December, in April for Easter, come in the summer, and then come again for whatever. Like, you have to leave a little bit of room. And I was explaining to the artists how I was doing my business. I was telling them, look, I do a lot of shows in Portugal. And then after a whole year of doing a bunch of shows in all the cities in Portugal, I spend a whole year refusing all the shows until I have a new album. I refuse all the shows in Portugal so that people want me again. And they're not used to seeing me every time they go out at night. Because I don't go to Portugal for 1 year. I now go to Mozambique, Angola, Santo Tomé Principe, all these areas, and I do shows there and maybe one show in the US. That's the second year. Then I release a new album, and then I'm back to doing shows in France, Belgium, Switzerland. And in 1 year, you can do 50 shows in all the clubs in here and there. So 2 years have gone by, and now Portugal didn't see me for 2 years. They're ready to pay the price that I want because they didn't see me for 2 years. And now I have a new hit. Something going on comes out. Big hit. Whatever songs, Question My Heart. Everybody wants me. The price is this much. Okay. The bookers in Portugal, we give them, okay, now you can sell the shows. And now we do all Portugal. Braga, Lisbon, Porto, Algarve, etc. All the clubs, etc., etc. Come for a weekend, do 4 shows. Go back to Paris, do some shows in Paris, etc., etc. And that's how I would divide the world so that I never have people completely tired of my brand. And then, but them, they wanted to control the West Indies so much, and no artist wanted to leave the market for other artists. So even inside of Section Zouk now, you had the bigger artists fighting against the smaller artists, and the artists that were with the mafia wanting to prevent the other artists to get in. So I signed an artist called AC Jordan, and at that time when we released his album, I'm like, hey, I talked to the CEO of Section Zouk. I said, Harold, we need his songs and Shada's songs to play on radio. So you do what you do. Talk to the people. We will do some shows for free, no problem. And I need them to go to the West Indies. And he tells me, yeah, you know, the radios this summer, they don't accept new artists. And I'm like, what? In reality, the male singers that were on tour this summer, they didn't want competition from a sushi roll artist. So they cut us and they said, oh no, we can take you, blah, 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 blah. But they started, and I was like, all right, it's gonna be time to leave and start what I do now, which is sushi roll completely digital. I was like, problems. And actually, yeah, it was starting to be, hey, there's only so much clubs. It's better the 10, 12 artists that are always in the West Indies. We don't let nobody get in. So me, I arrived with Mika Mendes, Looney Johnson, AC Jordan, Shana, and none of these can go perform in the West Indies. And I'm like, what's going on? And only the artists that I have that are part of that management go to the West Indies. And I say, that's not normal. And I tell the artists, guys, there's a problem because now you are bullying other artists that are in the label, but you are also bullying the clubs because when they want to have an artist that is outside, like Linsha, for example, you guys are sending artists to perform all around her show for free just to fuck her show. And you call the radios and you tell your radios, hey, if you play songs from such and such, then Fanigi or Sumia or XYZ or Marvin will not come to the party of your city. They will not come to the La Fête de Bouillon. And they're starting to do these bullying tactics to remove all the competition from the West Indies, including people from inside the label. And me, I was looking at this and I was like, yo, that's mafia tactics. And my last show in the West Indies was in 2007 because I was like, I'm not singing for 300 euros. I'm out. I went to Angola, did a lot of money because I had a lot of different places where I could perform. But everybody else was stuck in that system. So if you were inside, you was doing everything to never live. And if you were outside, you were pissed at the people who were preventing you from getting in. And if you were a club, and let's say you want to have Ali Angel and Tina and Lyncha as a show, you get bullied by Section Zouk that is telling you, hey, if you get these people in your club, you will not have Fanigi this summer. Just like the US was doing with the petrodollar to all these countries. Same thing. And you create, I remember telling the CEO of Section Zouk, Harold, at that time, brother, you are creating resentment from the clubs, from the promoters, from the mayors of the different cities, because you are bullying them into only using your artists. And at the same time, I remember going to a club with the artists that were performing one night, and they arrived, like all the artists, and I hear a girl in the public saying, oh no, not them again. People were tired of seeing them performing all the time because everybody was only between the two islands and Guyane. And I was telling the artists, hey, next summer you should skip going to the West Indies, and maybe you go to Belgium, maybe you go to Lille, maybe you go to Valenciennes, maybe you do the north of France this summer, and maybe after a month you can do Biarritz, you can do the south of France, and maybe, hey, I can try to take you to Portugal. And the artist would be, yeah, you think so? And then the management and everybody else and the other artists would come to the artist after me and would be like, hey, what Kaysha did tell you? Oh, he told me that, gave me great idea of things that I could do. And they would be like, don't listen to him. He's a hater. He's trying to fuck your career. Listen. Let me pay you a music video. You need a new music video. There you go. You want to go to the West Indies? I have a show for you. They don't pay you, but you're going to be in a hotel for 1 month for free. And you can have a car and a jet ski for free. You want to go? Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, just go. So you can do your photos on Facebook just like the other girls. And all these people were all being superstars, but they were all eating rocks. They were not making any money. They were going 2 months in the West Indies, and they were doing like 40, 50 shows and making maybe 3,000 to 5,000, which made no sense because we were at the top of the food chain, but everybody was being exploited and everybody was made believe that, yeah, that's how, we have to occupy the territory. And me, I was like, all right, I'm done with this market. Cool. And I was even done with the whole business, disgusted even. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm moving to Portugal. That was 4 years before me moving. I was like, all right, I'm moving to Portugal. I'm going to make sure that my business is completely digital. I'm going to make sure that all my masters, I can recuperate everything. And I'm going to make sure that I'm out of all these things. And I remember summer of 2008, I come back from Angola with €40,000 or $40,000, I don't remember. And I have two of the girls that I used to work with. I invite them to dinner, and they don't have food to feed their children. Their fridge are empty, and they just got their shows canceled because there's bad weather in the West Indies. And I was like, okay, your shows got canceled, but at least you have to 50% of the shows. No, we don't. And I was like, what? And I had to give them money for them to, and I gave them ideas of things that they could do. And soon as I gave them ideas, the management would come and say, Kaysha is a has-been. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's trying to fuck your career. Don't listen to him. Here's a little bit of money. Here's a new music video. Okay, we're sending you to Cayenne. Go. And me, I was like, yo. But because everybody had the fear of disappearing, the same way as most countries were pissed at the US, most countries in Africa, most countries in South America, most countries around the world, and even Europe, but everybody was scared of losing their position and being removed from SWIFT, just like Angola got removed from SWIFT. Everybody was scared of not being able to go back. And they were like, if I don't go there, I will not exist anymore. And I was telling all of them, guys, I'm proof that you don't need to go there to explode. Spotify was starting to exist. Money was made on iTunes. I was doing shows in Portugal, Switzerland, Mozambique, Angola, Sao Tome, the US, here and there. Cape Verde, I was going to Cape Verde. I was like, sisters, the world is vast. Martinique, Guadeloupe, Guyane is like a tiny, tiny percentage of the market that you can have. I was telling, I remember telling Sumia, for example, you are Moroccan. We can do zouk songs in Moroccan. We can do reggaeton in Moroccan. We can do Natasha Atlas style music just for that market. We get you a manager. We get you somebody just for that market, and we made you a star for all the Muslim or the Arab world. And you have two careers, one in French for the zouk market and one in Arab for that market. Soon as I said that, and she was like, oh, that's amazing. That's a great idea. Let's make it happen. And I was like, you don't need to go to Martinique and Guadeloupe every summer. Take this summer, take a month. We go in the studio. We do 10 new songs that we will release one every month for the next year, because you are not in the rising phase. Remember what I said in the beginning? You are not in the rising phase. You are not in the apogee phase. You are in the cruise phase. At that time, everybody's 35, 30. I was like, we are here now, and we got to be ready to land and not crash. We have to be ready to land. And I was like, if we can do the things we're going to do, we start writing for the young girls that are coming. We then live from our catalogs. And I was trying to prepare this for all the artists that I worked with, for Shana, for Taina, for Sumia, for Tia, but my plan was it was a contrary to what those people wanted to do, which was exploit these girls. And after I said all this, and she was like, okay, let's do it, let's go. And I was like, listen, we're gonna do shows in north of France, shows here. I'm gonna ask Olivier Dumou and my guys in London and my guys in Portugal, and we're gonna do some songs in English so you can have a market in Portugal. I was like, I know how to do it. But then they would come to them and they would be like, don't listen to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's angry. He's trying to ruin your career. And I was like, how come I'm ruining your career when I'm the one who built them with you? Same for Lila, Ledes, Taina, Shana, all these people, they got These people just came and they did that. And they were like, if you don't go to the West Indies, they will forget you. And we are managing the new girls. So if you don't want to do this show at the price that we're telling you, we'll send the new girls. Think about your children. Kaysha doesn't care. He's rich. Oh. And that's how I was like, I'm disgusted by the game. And I moved to Portugal. All this to explain to you that what I was telling you in the beginning of the show. The music business is exactly the same as the politics business. When I hear the stories of my dad or my uncles or my brother that's in politics, I'm like, this is nothing different than the music business. Money, ego, fame, decisions, and people trying to keep power. And in the end, everybody lost. The whole Zouk market got destroyed, and everybody got replaced by the Dajus and the Aya Nakamura because, everybody needed some fresh new blood. And then a few events happened as well, like the bombing of Paris, the fact that Paris didn't want clubs inside, so clubs had to go outside. So a lot of clubs closed. The 2008 economic crisis, people had no money to go to the clubs, so the clubs were empty. The people who would buy the bottles were not coming to the clubs, so the clubs could not pay the artists their cachet, etc., 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 etc. And now there's no Zouk market anymore. But just to explain to you that once all these artists went down, part 3, once all these artists started to have no more leverage and they needed shows, and all these artists had attitudes, all the promoters in the West Indies that got bullied by Section Zouk, they started closing the doors to all the artists. And they're starting to say, now we have local artists. We're going to work with our own currencies. We're going to work with our own artists. Now we don't need you. Stay in Paris. We got our local people. And, you need shows now? Listen, no, because last time I wanted to have these artists and you were bullying me. So now we don't need you. And that's how everybody went and started crossing the desert. While I arrived in Portugal, I was fine, going to the beach every day, chilling. But it's not a story about this. But I think that one day I will tell this story in detail. But I think it's a great analogy to when you bully people, there's a moment when karma is coming. And which takes me to a lot of things that are happening now. Okay, wait a minute.